Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's weather outlook for the Northeast region, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, we begin by looking at the last 3 days of total accumulated precipitation. We had a system that went through and went off to the north and east, and it has kind of left this lingering boundary sitting right here across the northeast, stretching back into the Corn Belt. And on that boundary, we've seen some widely scattered showers here. Now, what you see here going on in the Midwest is about to take over for the northeast. We've got a pretty large low-pressure system coming out of the Central Plains, and it will be heading toward the northeast, giving us an interesting mix of precipitation moving forward. So things are looking wet in the near term here as this next system emerges. And then we got to watch Texas after this, because the system's going to go right here through Texas, and some major uncertainties on its trajectory as it moves up the East Coast once we get into midweek and end of next week. So we got a lot to talk about. Let's dig into this. Looking at the operational European model, I want to take us all the way out to next Friday night, so more than a week from now. System number one puts down much of its precipitation right in through this area. It's going to be the second system that we have to try to diagnose and figure out what it is going to do. System number one really going to be bringing to the northwestern part of the Northeast. So I'm talking about the northwestern parts of Pennsylvania, Ohio, getting into New York and such, where we're going to get our heaviest precipitation right here around the lakes with much lower amounts near the coastal region. But the coastal area could get hit pretty hard toward the end of next week. So let's talk about it and figure out what this pattern's doing. As we begin looking here at midday on Friday, we still have, again, see the lingering showers that are pushing through parts of the Northeast here, but the main show is going on right now back in the Central Plains. Let's see when that system gets to the Northeast here. So let's play this throughout the day, getting into the overnight hours on Friday into early Saturday morning. It's about this time, let me get rid of those drawings there for you. It's about this time that we start to see the scattered showers pressing through the Northeast. So you can see there through New York, we've got quite a bit of precip coming in on these showers, but look at this. The main show gets going by the time we get to mid-morning on Saturday, through Pennsylvania, and then throughout middle of the day on Saturday through the evening hours. Now notice where the main frontal boundary sits is here. So we're keeping a lot of this precipitation really away from the coast, but as this system progresses, it will drag this boundary through the Northeast. See it there? So where have I got you to? This is Saturday evening, pressing into early Sunday morning. Now here's where the tricky part of the forecast comes in. A big area of higher atmospheric pressure builds in behind this. And with it, it's connected to a trough that's sitting over the Hudson Bay. And that means there's going to be some cold weather that sneaks through here. And what's going to be hard to figure out is, where is that rain-snow boundary going to be? We're going to switch over from some heavier rain to possibly some heavy wet snowfall for a short amount of time here. So as we progress forward, we see that that boundary is going to be primarily confined. You can see it here, primarily confined to the northwestern part of the Northeast. So you see this, and it's going to be really the higher elevations here, getting back across parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then up into Maine. Much of the coastal regions are going to be seeing, so get closer to I-95 corridor, get over there to the East Coast, it's going to be a rainfall event out of this system. But one thing is for sure, and that is behind it, some cooler weather is coming in. So we have to deal with that. Now, before I show you what the operational European model is picking up on for this system, I want to at least show you its snowfall forecast. So if we look here at the European model, we can see that much of the snow, like I said, is confined to that corridor, not getting down here to the coast. Anywhere between an inch, maybe in some locations some heavier amounts getting up over the 2, 3, 4, 5 inch range, but that'll be aided in lift by some of the topography. Now let's go from there to the GFS model. This is the US model. We do see similar placement on the snow, both with the heavy bands. See the heavy bands here getting into southern Canada or southeastern Canada, but right here close to the lake some heavier amounts. Now look at that when you compare it to the high-resolution NAM. We want to tuck the snow much farther back to the west here, getting through Ohio, really getting into the Great Lakes, but then getting into Ontario and Quebec, not necessarily bringing in heavier snowfall amounts for parts of upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire. So this is going to be one of these systems where we have to watch it very carefully for this weekend as to who's going to be getting the snow and who's not. I certainly think a lot of folks are going to be seeing some wet snowflakes as the front passes through, but in terms of accumulation, this doesn't look like a big snowfall maker for the Northeast. Now, before I show you the longer range stuff, watch the pattern here, okay? What do we need to do? We got to get rid of this. This big ridge over Alaska is allowing for this trough to exist. It's allowing it to stay in that part of the Hudson. And as long as it's there, we'll see this little shortwave. That's our problem maker for the weekend. They're going to team up and they're going to swing in some colder air. We've got to get rid of this ridge, and I want to show you what the operational European model is doing. So there it is. There comes the cooler weather with the higher pressure behind it. Look at that trough just occupying so much of the northeast here, bringing in the cooler temperatures. Here's our system we're going to watch next. It's going to be moving right in through this area. You watch here. See it sliding through? And it is going to be able to team up with this trough that's sitting here over the Hudson Bay. But I want you to turn your attention to Alaska. Yep, northeast, watch Alaska. With time, around the 4th, 5th, and 6th, that trough moves toward the Bering Sea, towards Siberia. Underneath it, a strong Pacific jet, and that allows for this trough, rather than digging into the northeast, it moves back toward Greenland. And the good news is, past the 5th, we see warmer conditions pressing into the northeast. It's going to feel like spring after we get past the first 3 or 4 days of the month of April. Thank you, Pacific Jet Stream, for knocking this whole pattern out of whack and getting rid of that Alaskan ridge. Now, before we take a look at temperatures, what about precipitation? So if I play this forward, we've already talked about this, right? This is the system that moves through backside snow. High pressure builds in. Yes, some lake effect snow out of this with that colder air that's coming in. But I want to really focus on the system you see going through Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and then eventually over toward the southeast. So I got you now out to midday Tuesday of next week. Now, the operational European model wants to take this right up the coast, which means this is going to be a heavy precipitation maker for the coastal states. It does not have major snow on the backside of it right now. It might be too warm, and the system's trajectory is going racing up the northeast, so I think this is going to be a big rainmaker as it goes through. Again, this is next week, Tuesday into Wednesday. But let me show you some inter-model comparison here. You ready? European model wants to keep the low right here. It is strong, but no major snow currently forecast by the European model out of this one. At the same time period, this again is looking at next Wednesday morning, the U.S. model, the GFS, wants to keep the low a little bit tucked closer here to parts of Virginia. And if that's the case, and this model eventually takes this storm system up closer to the coast, we could be worrying more about some snow here in the northeast, but this is going to be a much, much bigger rainmaker for the coastal states here. Okay, that's the GFS. Now, because we're comparing models, we might as well look at what the Europeans, not the Europeans, I'm sorry, well, they're European, but the folks at the UK Met Office, so we're talking about the United Kingdom. Their model keeps this, at the same time, keeps their low much farther to the south off the Carolina coast, and it wants to take this low way over here. And for completeness, let's talk about the Canadians. They don't even have much of a low-pressure system at all, and anything that does come through stays off the coast. So we've got quite a model battle here, and there's a lot of inconsistency, and that's primarily due because of what the Pacific Jet Stream is going to be doing over the coming days. So I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of uncertainty, which is why we produce these videos multiple times a week, so that by the time we get into next Wednesday, we'll have a much better idea on what to expect. What I'm telling you to do right now, keep a close eye on early next week for my forecast video that comes out on Monday, because we'll talk a whole lot more about this system. But what do we see for the week that follows this? So week 2, strong Pacific jet keeps the northwest wet. Strong subtropical jet keeps the middle part of the country wet. We will see near average conditions here across much of the northeast as we get into week 2. Thank that ridge that builds in that brings in some warmer conditions. So now that we're talking about warmer conditions, let's see what the European model says in terms of temperatures. Okay, yeah, we got this cold air that comes in. We've talked about that. That's to start off our week. But with our next system that slides through, there it is, it moved through on Tuesday into Wednesday. Watch what happens after I get you past this. Yeah, northeast, spring is coming. 8th, 9th, 10th, there's the warm-up that we've been seeing. So the pattern we've been in, which has been this one, keeping the middle part of the country and the northeast cooler than average, when you look at the whole of the month of March, well, by the time we get out to mid-April, strong Pacific Jet Stream, split flow out west, and that is not a pattern that makes it cold over the northeast. If it was a cold pattern over the northeast, you'd see a dominant trough sitting right here just north of the Great Lakes, and we don't see that. So things are going to be shifting here toward the open Atlantic. We're going to watch out for the interplay between what's going on in south of Greenland and the North Atlantic as helping that ridge reestablish itself throughout the month of April. So certainly not what we saw a year ago at this time. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to our next Northeast forecast video coming out on Tuesday morning. In the meantime, hope you have a great weekend. Be on the lookout for some heavy rains and some snow on the backside. And again, keep an eye on that system midweek to next week, okay? Talk to you again soon. Thank you.